Right.
Oh, Atlanta, aren't we just loving immigration? Welcome to part two. You awake? Welcome to part two of your migration notes. Again, I'm picking up right from 3.6. This is the second part of 3.6. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk about, um, whoa, that's not 3.6. We're going to talk about Asian migrant workers. And actually, this is fun to talk about for me because guess what? The World Cup. Um, I know this book was written a few years ago, but one of the biggest reasons why people migrated within Asia is to go work in Qatar to build these soccer stadiums for the World Cup in 2022. So if you're watching this now, it's November 2021. Um, this time next year in November 2022, um, there's the World Cup. And if you're watching this in the future, I can't believe we won the World Cup. Calling it now. All right, right into it. Asia's migrant workers. Asia is both a major source and a major destination for migrants in search of work. China. Approximately 35 million Chinese live in other countries. The United States is the leading receiving country, although most have emigrated to countries in Southeast Asia. For example, Chinese comprise 3/4 of the population in Singapore and 1/4 in Malaysia. China's booming economy is now attracting immigrants from neighboring countries, especially Vietnamese, who are willing to work in China's rapidly expanding factories. Immigration from abroad pales in comparison to internal migration within China. Southwest Asia. The wealthy oil producing countries of Southwest Asia have been major destinations for people from South and Southeast Asia, including India, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Thailand. In addition, citizens of poorer countries in Southwest Asia have emigrated to the region's wealthier countries. Working conditions for immigrants have been considered poor in some of those countries. Time out. That's the biggest issue with World Cup stadiums in Qatar. Um, the working conditions for migrant workers in Qatar have been compared to slave conditions. Okay, time in. The Philippine government determined in 2011 that only two countries in Southwest Asia, Israel and Oman, were safe for their Filipino migrants, and the others lacked adequate protection for workers' rights. For their part, oil producing countries fear that the increasing numbers of immigrants will spark political unrest and abandonment of traditional Islamic customs. Okay, I'm sorry, the online book has a problem with this section because I want you to know what a remittance is. A remittance. Migrants who find work in another country frequently send a portion of the wages they have earned to relatives back home. The transfer of money by workers to people in one country from which they emigrated is a remittance. The total amount of remittances worldwide was $550 billion in 2013. The figure has been increasing by nearly 10% annually. Remittances are an increasingly important source of wealth for people in developing countries, especially following cutbacks and official assistance from foreign governments and international aid agencies. People in India received the most remittances in 2013, $71 billion, followed by people in China, $60 billion. Nearly one half of the GDP or gross domestic product of Tajikistan and one third of Kyrgyzstan comprised remittances, primarily from immigrants living in Russia. The cost of transferring money is high in many places. Don't know why that happened. The cost of transferring money is high in many places. Banks and firms such as Western Union that specialize in money transfers charge high fees for the service, an average of 9% worldwide. To transfer $200 from the United States, it costs an average of $6 to Mexico and $12 to Haiti. It costs around $20 to transfer $200 between many African countries. So A remittance is sending money. So if you emigrate from one country but work in another, when you're getting paid in one country and you send money back to your home country, to your family, friends, whatever, that's called a remittance. Okay, so let's get into the type of migrants, gender and age of migrants. So most migrants traditionally were males. Families with children comprise an increasing share of migrants. So here we go. Ravenstein noted distinctive gender and family status patterns in his migration theories. Most long distance migrants were male. Most long distance migrants are adult individuals rather than families with children. Gender of migrants. Ravenstein theorized that males were more likely than females to migrate long distances to other countries because searching for work was the main reason for international migration, and males were much more likely than females to be employed. This held true for US immigrants during the 19th and much of the 20th centuries when about 55% were male. But the gender pattern reversed in the 1990s, and in the 21st century, women constitute about 55% of US immigrants. Mexicans who come to the United States without authorized immigration documents, currently the largest group of US immigrants, show similar gender changes. As recently as the 1980s, males constituted 85% of the Mexican migrants arriving in the United States without proper documents, according to US Census and Immigration Service estimates. But since the 1990s, women have accounted for about half of the unauthorized immigrants from Mexico. The increased female migration to the United States partly reflects the changing role of women in Mexican society. In the past, rural Mexican women were obliged to marry at a young age and to remain in the village to care for children. Now, some Mexican women are migrating to the United States to join husbands or brothers already in the United States, but most are seeking jobs. At the same time, women feel increased pressure to get jobs in the United States because of poor economic conditions in Mexico. So, again, for every push factor, there's a pull factor. For every pull factor, there's a push. Age and education of migrants. Ravenstein also believed that most long distance migrants were young adults seeking work rather than children or elderly people. For the most part, this pattern continues for the United States. About 40% of immigrants are young adults between the ages of 25 and 39, compared to about 23% of the entire US population. Immigrants are less likely to be elderly people. Only 5% of immigrants are over age 65, compared to 14% of the entire US population. Children under 15 comprise 16% of immigrants, compared to 23% for the total US population. With the increase in women migrating to the United States, more children are coming with their mothers. Recent immigrants to the United States have attended school for fewer years and are less likely to have high school diplomas than are US citizens. The typical unauthorized Mexican immigrant has attended school for 4 years, less than the average American, but a year more than the average Mexican. The number of unaccompanied minors trying to cross into the United States increased sharply beginning in late 2013. Nearly 90% are males between 12 and 17. As with other migration flows, the large increase in teenage boys trying to reach the United States stems from a mix of push and pull factors. Most are pushed out of Honduras and El Salvador because of increased gang violence there, and are pulled to the United States because of rumors that they won't be deported if caught. So, again, that is a big time thing for you to pick up on, simply because this, again, when it was written, and if that perception was true at this time, then you kind of understand why a presidential candidate like Donald Trump became popular, because of his stance on immigration. Just saying. Okay, 3.8, unauthorized immigration. So these are some challenges that migrants face. So Some immigrants are in the United States without authorization. US Mexico border crossings vary widely in appearance. The number of people allowed to immigrate into the United States is at a historically high level, but the number who wish to come is even higher. Many who cannot legally enter the United States immigrate illegally. Those who do so are entering without proper documents and thus are called unauthorized immigrants. The principal reason for unauthorized immigration to the United States is to seek a job. So here are the characteristics. The Pew Hispanic Center estimated that there were 11.3 million unauthorized immigrants living in the United States in 2013. The number increased rapidly during the first years of the 21st century. After hitting a peak of 12.2 million in 2007, the number declined because of reduced job opportunities in the United States during the severe recession that started in 2008. In other words, the number of unauthorized immigrants entering the United States is now less than the number leaving. Other information about unauthorized immigrants, according to Pew Hispanic Center: distribution. California and Texas have the largest number of unauthorized immigrants. Nevada has the largest percentage. Source country: more than one half of unauthorized immigrants emigrate from Mexico. The remainder are about evenly divided between other Latin American countries and other regions of the world. Children: the 11.3 unauthorized immigrants included 1 million children. In addition, while living in the United States, unauthorized immigrants have given birth to approximately 4.5 million babies who are legal citizens of the United States. Years in the United States. The duration of residency in the United States has been increasing for unauthorized immigrants. In a 2013 Pew survey, 61% of unauthorized adult immigrants had residence in the United States for 10 years or more, 23% for 5 to 9 years, and 16%. And we got cut off there. But again, the important thing here is just to get a basic characteristic of where migrants are coming from, where they are going, their age, and gender. Oh, there she is. We pick up on the next page. And 16% for less than 5 years. A similar survey in 2003 showed a different distribution. 38% had been in the United States for less than 5 years compared to 37% for more than 10 years. Labor force. Approximately 8 million unauthorized immigrants are employed in the United States, accounting for around 5% of the total US civilian labor force. Unauthorized immigrants were much more likely than the average American to be employed in construction and hospitality, food and service, lodging jobs, and less likely to be in white collar jobs such as education, healthcare, and finance. Mexico's border with the United States. The US-Mexico border is 3,141 kilometers, or 1,951 miles long. The joint US-Mexican International Boundary and Water Commission is responsible for keeping official maps on the basis of a series of 19th century treaties. The commission is also responsible for marking the border by maintaining 276 6-foot tall iron monuments erected in the late 19th century, as well as 440 15-inch tall markers added in the 1970s. The United States has constructed a barrier covering approximately 1/4 of the border. Actually locating the border is difficult in some remote areas. Yeah, so that line on a map where we see the border between Texas and Mexico, a lot of times we don't know where it is. It is the Rio Grande River in Texas, but once you start floating into New Mexico and Arizona, and I've been to, where is that in? It's right in here. It is, there's literally nothing there. It's desert. So where is the border, right? We don't know, but we know it's close. All right, now the fun begins. U.S. immigration policies. Quota laws restrict legal immigration to the United States. Revising U.S. immigration laws is controversial. Most countries have adopted selective immigration policies that admit some types of immigrants, but not others. The two reasons that most visas are granted are for specific employment placement and family reunification. Ah, yes, let's learn about quotas. The era of unrestricted immigration to the United States ended when Congress passed the Quota Act in 1921 and the National Origins Act in 1924. These laws established a quota, or a maximum limit on the number of people who could immigrate to the United States during a one-year period. Because the number of applicants for admission to the United States far exceeds the quota, Congress has set preferences. One, family reunification. Approximately 3/4 of immigrants are admitted to reunify families, primarily spouses or unmarried children of people already living in the United States. The typical wait for a spouse to gain entry is currently about 5 years. Skilled workers. Exceptionally talented professionals receive most of the remainder of the quota. Doctors, what do we call them? Professors, engineers. Diversity. A few immigrants are admitted by lottery under a diversity category for people from countries that historically sent few people to the United States. The quota does not apply to refugees who are admitted if they are judged genuine refugees. Also admitted without limit are spouses, children, and parents of US citizens. Other countries charge that by giving preference to skilled workers. Immigration policies in the United States and Europe contribute to a brain drain, which is a large-scale emigration by talented people. Scientists, researchers, doctors, and other professionals migrate to countries where they can make better use of their abilities. Asians have made especially good use of the priorities set by the US quota laws. Many well-educated Asians enter the United States under the preference for skilled workers. Once admitted, they can bring in relatives under the family unification provisions of the quota. Eventually, these immigrants can bring in a wider range of other relatives from Asia through a process of chain migration, which is the migration of people to a specific location because relatives or members of the same nationality previously worked or previously migrated there. Attitudes toward unauthorized immigration. Americans are divided concerning whether unauthorized migration helps or hurts the country. This ambivalence extends to specific elements of immigration law. See debated. Feature in that, the debated part, you're going to want to write in both sides of that argument. Okay, number one, border security. Americans would like more effective border patrols so that fewer unauthorized immigrants can get into the country, but they don't want to spend a lot of money to build more border fences. Why is that? Taxes. Do we want protection? Yes. Do you have to pay for protection? Yes. Workplace. Most Americans recognize that unauthorized immigrants take jobs that no one else wants. So they support some type of work-related program to make them legal. And they oppose raids on workplaces and attempts to round up unauthorized immigrants. Civil rights. Americans favor letting law enforcement officials stop and verify the legal status of anyone they suspect of being an unauthorized immigrant. On the other hand, they oppose enforcement efforts that could violate the civil rights of US citizens. Civics is written all over immigration. Local initiatives. Polls show that most Americans believe that enforcement is a federal government responsibility. The US Supreme Court struck down most provisions of an Arizona law that obligated local law enforcement officials, when practicable, to determine a person's immigration status. Pretty much, you had to stop in Arizona for a while and show an ID. Well, the Supreme Court of the United States said, you can't do that. Okay, so this debate it here is extremely important. I'm not going to read through it, but what I would like for you to do, if you are taking your notes right now, there is a spot in your notes where I want you to write down bank and bank, both sides of this. Over here, that you want to tighten security. Over here, you want to offer a path to legal status. Okay, write that, learn it, love it, breathe it, possess it. Now, from Mexico, the view from Mexico. From the United States, the view to the south may seem straightforward. Millions of Mexicans are trying to cross the border by any means, legal or otherwise, in search of employment, family reunification, and a better way of life in the United States. The view from Mexico is more complex. Along its northern border with the United States, Mexico is the source for unauthorized immigrants. At the same time, along its southern border with Guatemala, Mexico is the destination for unauthorized immigrants. So the issue with the border with Mexico isn't just with Mexico. A lot of migrants flow through Mexico trying to get to the United States. So when discussing immigration, anybody who says, well, we want to keep those Mexicans out, they're wrong. They're not always Mexicans. Sometimes they're Haitian, sometimes they're Hondurans, sometimes they're Guatemalans, sometimes they're any country from Central America or the Caribbean. Okay, last part, immigration concerns in Europe. Europe has a large number of immigrants seeking work. Anti-immigrant attitudes have increased in Europe. Of the world's 16 countries with the highest per capita income, 14 are in Northern and Western Europe. As a result, the region attracts immigrants from poorer regions located to the south and east. These immigrants serve a useful role in Europe, taking low status and low skilled jobs that local residents would accept. In cities such as Berlin, Brussels, Paris, and Zurich, immigrants provide essential services such as driving buses, collecting garbage, repairing streets, and washing dishes. Migrating in Europe for work. Although relatively low paid by European standards, immigrants earn far more than they would at home. By letting their people work elsewhere, poorer countries reduce their own unemployment problems. Immigrants also help their native countries by sending remittances back home to their families. Germany and other wealthy European countries operated guest worker programs mainly during the 1960s and 70s. Immigrants from poorer countries were allowed to immigrate temporarily to obtain jobs. Guest workers were expected to return to their country of origin once their work was done. Circular migration is the temporary movement of a migrant worker between home and host to seek employment. So again, home to host, back to home, circular migration. The term guest worker is no longer used in Europe, and the government programs no longer exist. Rather than circular migrants, many immigrants who arrived originally under the guest worker program have remained permanently. They, along with their children and grandchildren, have become citizens of the host country. The foreign-born population exceeds 40% in Luxembourg and 20% in Switzerland. Among the most populous European countries, Spain has the highest share of foreign-born population. In Europe as a whole, though, the percentage of foreign-born residents is only 1/2 that of North America. Current sources of immigrants in Europe. Europeans have more rights than in the past to migrate elsewhere within Europe, whereas non-Europeans face more restrictions than in the past. Agreements among European countries, especially the 1985 Schengen Treaty, give a citizen of one European country the right to hold a job, live permanently, and own property elsewhere. The removal of migration restrictions for Europeans has set off large-scale migration flows within the region. The principal flows are from the poorer countries of Europe to the richer ones, where job opportunities have been greater. During the 20th century, large number of Turks and North Africans migrated to Europe. Germany's Turkish population remains the largest group of non-Europeans in Europe. In recent years, the largest flows within Europe have included one from countries in southeastern Europe, such as Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, and Serbia, especially to Italy and Spain. From countries in Eastern Europe, such Poland, Russia, and Ukraine, especially in Germany, the United Kingdom, and Ireland. Attitudes toward immigrants. Most European countries are now in stage 4 of the demographic transition and have economies capable of meeting the needs of their people. The safety valve of emigration is no longer needed. To the contrary, population growth in Europe is fueled by immigration from other regions, a trend that many Europeans dislike. Hostility to immigrants has become a central plank in the platform of political parties in many European countries. These parties blame immigrants for crime, unemployment, and high welfare costs. Above all, the anti-immigration parties fear that long-standing cultural traditions of the host country are threatened by immigrants who adhere to different religions, speak different languages, and prefer different food and other cultural habits. From the standpoint of these parties, immigrants represent a threat to the centuries-old cultural traditions of the host country. The inhospitable climate for immigrants in Europe is especially ironic because Europe was the source of most of the world's immigrants, especially during the 19th century. Application of new technologies spawned by the Industrial Revolution in areas such as public health, medicine, and food produced a rapid decline in the crude death rate and pushed much of Europe into stage 2 of the demographic transition, high natural increase rate. As the population increased, many Europeans found limited opportunities for economic advancement. Migration to the United States, Canada, Australia, and other regions of the world served as a safety valve, draining off some of that increase. The emigration of 65 million Europeans, come on, the emigration of 65 million Europeans has profoundly changed world culture. As do all other migrants, Europeans brought their cultural heritage to their new homes. Because of migration, Indo-European languages are now spoken by half of the world's people. And Europe's most prevalent religion, Christianity, has the world's largest number of adherents. European art, music, literature, philosophy, and ethics have also diffused throughout the world. Regions that were sparsely inhabited prior to European immigration, such as North America and Australia, have become closely integrated into Europe's cultural traditions. Distinctive European political structures and economic systems have also diffused to these regions. Europeans also planted the seeds of conflict by migrating to regions with large indigenous populations, especially in Africa and Asia. They frequently imposed political domination on existing populations and injected their cultural values with little regard for local traditions. Economies in Africa and Asia became based on raising crops and extracting resources for export to Europe rather than on growing crops for local consumption and using resources to build local industry. Many of today's conflicts in former Europeans result from past practices by European immigrants, such as drawing arbitrary boundary lines and discriminating among different local ethnic groups. So, yikes. So, in summary, here's what we got. Most people migrate for a combination of push and pull reasons. There's a reason why that's a big emphasis for me. You've got bullet points here, and you've got a couple pages where we've got all of the definitions that you need to know. With that being said, Immigration's a loaded topic. Politically, that's up for debate because of the laws restricting or allowing different types of migrants to come in. Economically, migration is a big issue because people migrate. The biggest reason why people migrate is for jobs. And if they are pulled into one area for a job, that means they're pushed away from another area because of a lack of jobs. Culturally, immigration it can be a positive because you have this natural mix of cultures among a local area. However, one of the biggest issues with migration are people being afraid of where, like, basic local traditions from that particular area, a loss of identity, which inherently is a good point. Socially, are you kidding me? Anytime that you get a movement of people for a particular reason, you have to study it, you have to recognize it, and the reasons why people move, their characteristics, where they're going, these are all things that you want to know. So with that being said, have a wonderful day. I hope you learned some things in this video and in your notes. Don't forget to submit. Love you all. Have a good one. Bye bye.